I've always believed that success wasn't just about making money. It was about creating an empire. Standing at my office window, watching the Seattle skyline fade into dusk, I can't help but smile at how perfectly I've orchestrated my life. 20 years of calculated moves have built this. Meridian Consulting Group, my crown jewel, now valued at $700 million. Claire, my wife of 30 years, the perfect business partner and hostess. Our restored Victorian in Queen Anne Hill. It's all exactly as I planned. My phone buzzes. Lena, my latest administrative assistant, wants to know if I'll be working late again. I text back a quick confirmation. Claire stopped questioning my late nights years ago. She's too busy with her own projects lately. Something about expanding her event planning business. I should probably pay more attention, but she's always been content managing the smaller things while I handle the real business. The corner of my desk catches my eye. Claire's reorganized my papers again. She's been doing that more frequently, managing my files, asking about client meetings, probably just bored now that our kids are both away at college. I make a mental note to buy her something nice, a trip to Paris maybe. That usually keeps her happy. Mr. Anderson, my intercom crackles. The Richardson contract is ready for your signature. Ah, Richardson. Another 8-figure deal. I've been cultivating this one for months, carefully moving funds between accounts to make everything look perfect. Creative accounting, I call it. Everyone does it. I'm just better at it than most. Like the affairs, discreet, managed, necessary parts of being a man in my position. Later that night, I find Claire in her home office, surrounded by spreadsheets. She's been spending more time here lately, her reading glasses perched on her nose, that slight smile playing at her lips. The same smile she wore when we first met, though now there's something different in her eyes. Don't wait up, I say, dropping a kiss on her head. I won't, she replies, not looking up. I have plenty to keep me busy. Something in her tone makes me pause at the door, but I shake it off. After all, what could she possibly be up to that I haven't already anticipated? The first sign that something was wrong was the silence. No cleaning staff bustling about, no security guard at his usual post. My keycard still worked, but as I stepped into my office suite at 9 p.m., the emptiness felt heavy, deliberate. My office had been meticulously reorganized. Not ransacked, worse. Every file, every document, every backup drive, gone. Only my laptop remained, centered perfectly on my desk like a prop in a stage play. When I opened it, a single document waited on the screen, a comprehensive list of every account I'd manipulated over the past decade, complete with dates, amounts, and names. My hands started shaking as I scrolled. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, real estate deals under shell companies. Every affair, every gift, every hotel receipt, documented with surgical precision. At the bottom, a single line. Board meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. The phone calls started then. First Richardson, canceling our contract with immediate effect. Then Thompson Industries, Westbrook Partners, Maxwell Corp. Each one a carefully cultivated client. Each one severing ties with a cold finality that spoke of absolute certainty. When I finally stumbled home at midnight, Claire's home office light was still on. I found her there, calm as ever, reviewing documents with that same small smile I'd seen for weeks. Looking for these? She gestured to a stack of papers, copies of everything missing from my office. I have to admit, you were thorough. Hidden accounts in 7 countries, affairs with 3 of my closest friends, and all those creative bookkeeping entries. Impressive, really. I maintained my composure, years of practice keeping my voice steady. Whatever you think you found. Oh, I don't think, David, I know. She removed her reading glasses slowly. And so does the board, the SEC, and every major client you've deceived for the past 10 years. But please, tell me more about how you can explain everything. I stood there, watching 15 years of marriage transform into something unrecognizable. Claire hadn't raised her voice, hadn't shown a hint of anger. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes told me everything. I wasn't facing a betrayed wife. I was facing an executioner. The board meeting was a massacre. I sat there, watching my carefully constructed reality crumble through a fog of disbelief. Every accusation was backed by irrefutable evidence. Documents I'd thought were destroyed, conversations I'd sworn were private, transactions I'd buried so deep they should have been impossible to trace, After alone in my office, not for much longer, they made that clear, I began seeing the patterns. Claire's lunch dates with my biggest clients' wives, her sudden interest in my filing system, the way she'd encouraged Lena, my latest mistake, to confide in her about workplace stress. My phone buzzed. A message from Robert, my oldest friend and personal accountant. "Sorry, Dave. Claire showed me the proof 3 months ago. Had to do the right thing." 3 months. The realization hit like a physical blow. While I'd been dismissing her as my bored, dutiful wife, she'd been systematically dismantling my life. Each memory took on a new, sickening clarity. The charity gala last month, she'd seated me with the SEC investigator's wife. That day she'd organized my desk, wearing the perfume I'd once bought for Jennifer. She'd known then too. I pulled up her event planning company's website, really looking at it for the first time in years. The client list made my blood run cold. Every major financial firm in Seattle, law offices, digital security consultants. She hadn't been building a party planning business. She'd been building a network. My phone kept lighting up with messages from increasingly angry business associates. Each one revealed another piece of her puzzle. Meetings I thought were secret. Deals I'd thought were hidden. Promises I'd made and broken. She'd gathered it all, patiently, methodically. In my desk drawer, I found a photo from our early days. Claire looking up at me with adoring eyes. I'd thought that woman was simple, uncomplicated. Now I realized I'd never really known her at all. The woman I'd underestimated for 15 years had just outplayed me at my own game, and judging by the legal documents waiting in my email, she was far from finished. I waited in Claire's home office, staring at the business accounting certificate on her wall, dated 3 years ago. All this time, I dismissed her night classes as a hobby, something to keep her busy while I entertained Jessica, my VP of operations. Jessica, who'd apparently been having coffee with Claire every Wednesday for the past 2 months. When Claire entered, she didn't seem surprised to find me there. Of course not. She didn't seem surprised by anything anymore. "The Cayman account," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "How did you find it?" "Which one?" She settled into her chair, relaxed as a cat, watching a cornered mouse. "The one under your mother's maiden name, or the one you created using our son's social security number?" The casual mention of our children stung more than I expected. "You've made your point, Claire. Name your price." "That's still your problem, David. You think everything has a price?" She pulled out a folder, red like all her important files. I remembered teasing her about her color coding system. "The Meridian shares have already been transferred to a holding company. Your Range Rover will be repossessed tomorrow. The house," she smiled. "Well, it was never really in your name, was it?" She opened the folder, spreading out photos I thought I'd been careful to delete. "Rebecca at the Four Seasons. You should have noticed when she started working with my event planning team last year. Jessica in Vancouver. Did you really think the business conference dates wouldn't overlap with my accounting seminars? And Lauren," she tapped another photo, "our tennis instructor. That one hurt, David. She was in our home. Each photo came with receipts, times, dates, hotel bills I'd buried in company expenses, gifts I'd written off as client appreciation items. "How long have you known?" "About Rebecca, 3 years, Jessica, 2 years, Lauren." She paused. "She came to me 6 months ago, consumed by guilt. Apparently, you have a tell when you lie. You touch your wedding ring. I noticed it years ago, but I needed proof. Real proof." I gripped the desk, knuckles white. "I'll fight this." "With what? Your reputation?" She turned her laptop screen. Emails, hundreds of them, all between me and various women over the years. "The board already has copies. The CFO was particularly interested in how many business dinners you claimed during personal trips." I watched her leave, the weight of realization crushing my chest. Every affair, every lie, every hidden expense. She hadn't just discovered them. She'd cataloged them, cross-referenced them, built an ironclad case while I'd arrogantly assumed she was just keeping herself busy with accounting classes. My phone buzzed, a news alert about Meridian's stock plummeting. Below it, a calendar reminder for tomorrow's country club brunch, the monthly meeting where Seattle's business elite gathered to network. The thought of facing them, of walking into that room knowing what was coming, made my stomach turn. but not showing up would be worse. Claire knew that too. She'd probably counted on it. The country club dining room fell silent when Claire walked in, not because of the Chanel suit, though it was new, but because of who accompanied her. James Wilson, my biggest competitor and chairman of Wilson Global Partners. I was trapped at my usual table, forcing down bland eggs Benedict, while Seattle's business elite subtly shifted their chairs away from me. The morning news had broken the story of Meridian's financial irregularities. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing with panicked investors and angry board members. David, Claire's voice carried across the room as she approached, James Wilson at her shoulder. I believe you know James. He's been instrumental in helping me understand the complexities of corporate restructuring. The pieces clicked into place. Wilson Global Partners, the same firm that had mysteriously acquired controlling interest in 3 of my subsidiary companies last month. I looked at James, a man I'd mocked at countless business functions, who now wore the smile of someone long awaiting this moment. Your wife is quite remarkable, James said, resting his hand on the back of my chair. When she approached us with evidence of Meridian's creative accounting practices, we were impressed. But her proposal for rehabilitating the company's legitimate assets? Brilliant. Claire placed a document on the table. The board has approved the merger. Wilson Global Partners will absorb Meridian's clients and assets, protecting the shareholders and employees you put at risk. I've already signed my shares over her. My hands shook as I scanned the document. Every contingency I'd planned for, every emergency option I'd hidden away, she'd closed them all. My own signature from various documents had been compiled legally, binding me to the merger. You can't, I started, but the words died as I watched 3 more board members approach our table, papers in hand. Actually, David, Claire said softly, I already did. Oh, and the forensic audit starts tomorrow. James's team is particularly interested in those offshore accounts you thought were so cleverly hidden. She turned to leave, then paused. The house keys and car keys go to my lawyer by 5. Don't worry about packing everything. I know which items were bought with legitimate funds. It's a very short list. The dining room stayed silent long after they left, the weight of dozens of stares pressing down on me. My phone buzzed again, a text from my lawyer announcing his firm could no longer represent me due to conflict of interest. Claire hadn't just taken my company. She'd taken my entire world. And somehow, I knew this was just her opening move. I didn't recognize my reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror. 3 days of stubble. A wrinkled Brooks Brothers shirt I've been wearing since the country club. The great David Anderson, reduced to living at the Marriott off Interstate 5, watching his life savings disappear into a fleet of lawyers who wouldn't return his calls. The minibar beckoned, the last refuge of fallen men. As I poured my 3rd scotch, my phone lit up with a notification. Claire was featured in the Seattle Business Journal. The photo showed her standing with James Wilson, both smiling as they announced the strategic merger of our companies. The article praised her role in uncovering significant financial misconduct and protecting hundreds of jobs. The glass shattered in my grip. Blood and scotch dripped onto the bathroom tile as 15 years of memories crashed over me. Claire quietly taking night classes while I laughed about her cute attempt to understand business. Claire methodically befriending every woman I'd betrayed her with, gathering their stories, their evidence. Claire studying our accounts with the patience of an archaeologist, excavating every buried secret. You stupid bastard, I whispered to my reflection. All those years, I'd thought I was the chess master, moving pieces across the board. I'd never noticed I was just another pawn in her game. My phone buzzed again, a message from our son. Mom told me everything. Don't try to contact me or Emma for a while. The kids. God, the kids. I slid down the bathroom wall, the cold tile grounding me as my world spun. They'd know everything now. Every affair, every lie, every dollar I'd hidden away instead of paying for their future. I wanted to blame Claire for the public humiliation, for turning our children against me, for destroying everything I'd built. But sitting there, bleeding and alone in a mid-range hotel bathroom, the truth was unavoidable. I'd destroyed it all myself. Claire had simply documented the demolition. A new email arrived from her lawyer, papers for a post-nuptial agreement. The terms were clear: sign over everything cleanly or watch the evidence of tax fraud make its way to the FBI. My hands stopped shaking as I read it. For the first time in days, my mind cleared. I'd spent 20 years building my empire through careful manipulation and calculated risks. Maybe it was time to prove I hadn't lost that edge entirely. I chose the restaurant carefully, Le Petit Cochon, where we'd celebrated our 15th anniversary just 6 months ago. Claire agreed to meet, probably assuming the familiar setting would give her another psychological advantage. But this time, I had a plan. She arrived precisely on time, wearing the emerald silk blouse I'd bought her in Milan, the same one she'd worn the day she'd convinced Jessica to confess everything. "You're looking well," I lied, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I have a counterproposal." Claire didn't touch the envelope. Instead, she pulled out her phone, set it on the table, and pressed record. "Go on." "I know about the Wilson deal's weakness. The Jensen contract, their entire Asian expansion hinges on it." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "One phone call to Jensen about Wilson's history with failed international ventures, and your precious merger collapses." Her expression didn't change. "Are you finished?" "I want Meridian's domestic operations and half the liquid assets. In exchange, Jensen never learns about Wilson's Jakarta disaster." Claire took a slow sip of water. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine laugh that turned heads at nearby tables. "David," she said, opening her purse, "Mr. Jensen is having dinner with our daughter Emma right now. He's been mentoring her since January, my idea, of course." "And that Jakarta story?" She slid out her own envelope. "James Wilson published a full disclosure last week, including how they turned the situation around. It's actually strengthened investor confidence." My throat went dry. "That's not possible?" She finally opened my envelope, scanning the contents with apparent amusement. "You really haven't learned, have you? I spent 3 years planning this. Did you really think I'd leave any loose ends?" She stood, smoothing her skirt. "The FBI will be visiting your hotel room tonight, that offshore account you emptied yesterday. It triggered exactly the alerts I knew it would. Oh, and David?" She placed a small recorder next to my envelope. "Attempted blackmail is such an ugly thing to add to your charges." I sat there, paralyzed, as she walked away. Through the window, I watched her slide into a waiting car, James Wilson's Bentley. She'd known I would try this. She'd counted on it, and I'd played my part perfectly, right to the end. The FBI interview lasted 6 hours. They knew everything, not just about the emptied offshore account, but about tax schemes I thought were bulletproof. As they laid out document after document, I recognized Claire's meticulous touch in the organization, the detailed timeline, the careful annotations. "Mr. Anderson," Agent Roberts said, closing yet another damning folder, "you do understand the severity of these charges?" I nodded numbly, watching my last desperate plans crumble. My lawyer, the third one this week, and the only one who'd return my calls, looked grim. Back in my hotel room, CNN was running the story. Meridian Consulting Group's former CEO faces federal investigation. The crawler beneath showed Meridian stock rebounding under its new management. Claire and James Wilson had already announced a restructuring plan that would save every job below executive level. My phone lit up with a message from Lauren, the tennis instructor. "I'm sorry, David. Claire helped me get a coaching position at a club in Portland. I can't risk losing that by helping you." One by one, I called in favors from 2 decades of business deals. Each call ended the same way: polite regrets, mentions of Claire's influence, clicks of disconnection. Even my oldest friends were choosing sides, and they weren't choosing mine. The hotel room's silence was broken by another news alert. Wilson Global Partners announces expansion. There was Claire, poised and professional, outlining plans for the company's future. The camera panned to the audience, including Rebecca, Jessica, and Lauren, all seated prominently, all nodding supportively. She hadn't just taken my company and my dignity. She'd turned every person I'd ever betrayed into a public ally. The women I'd manipulated were now her strongest supporters, their presence a testimony to my character and hers. My lawyer called with an update. The board had voted unanimously to cooperate with the federal investigation. Every executive who might have helped me was scrambling to save themselves. "One more thing," he added hesitantly. "Mrs. Anderson, she's offered a deal, conditional on a full confession and guilty plea." I laughed bitterly. Even now, she was orchestrating everything. The TV droned on, business analysts praising Claire's masterful corporate rehabilitation strategy. In the corner, federal agents were boxed my personal items from the office. The mighty David Anderson, undone by the woman he'd underestimated for 15 years. And somewhere across the city, Claire was just getting started. The plea deal papers sat untouched on the hotel desk, their legal language spelling out my complete surrender. My lawyer had left hours ago, his parting words echoing, "It's this or decades, David. She's giving you a way out." Even now, Claire was showing mercy I didn't deserve. A knock at the door interrupted my brooding. A courier with a package, a USB drive, and a handwritten note in Claire's precise script, "Before you decide." My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dozens of them, each dated and labeled. Our son's graduation speech, praising his mother's strength. Our daughter Emma's first day at Wilson Global Partners. Beaming as she told the board about her plans for corporate responsibility initiatives. Holiday dinners I'd missed. Family moments I'd traded for fleeting affairs and offshore accounts. The final video was different. Claire sitting in her office, looking directly at the camera. "David," she began, "by now you've seen what your choices cost you. But this isn't about punishment. It's about justice. Not just for me, but for every person you betrayed, every employee whose pension you risked, every client you deceived, every woman you manipulated." She paused, and for a moment I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. The plea deal isn't a trap. It's a chance to salvage something from this wreckage. Your choice, as always. The video ended. Behind it, my email pinged with a message from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They had evidence of tax fraud going back 12 years. Without the plea deal, they were pushing for maximum sentences. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Dad, please take the deal. Not for us. For yourself." I looked around the hotel room, my entire life reduced to 3 suitcases and a minibar. Outside, Seattle's lights twinkled indifferently. Somewhere out there, Claire was building a legacy on the ashes of mine. With trembling fingers, I reached for the plea papers. Not in surrender, but in recognition. Claire hadn't just outplayed me. She'd offered me one last chance at dignity. I signed my name, the ink sealing more than just a legal document. It sealed the end of David Anderson, corporate titan, and perhaps the beginning of something else. The Wall Street Journal sits unopened on my cramped studio apartment's kitchen counter. I already know what's inside, another glowing profile of Claire Anderson, the corporate world's rising star. House arrest has its small mercies. I can choose when to face my humiliation. Through my window, I watch Seattle's business district glitter in the distance. My monitoring anklet ensures I can't venture closer than this shabby neighborhood on the outskirts, a far cry from our Queen Anne Hill mansion. 3 months into my 2-year house arrest, courtesy of Claire's carefully crafted plea deal that kept me out of prison. My phone, a basic model now, no smart features, chimes with a rare text from Emma. Mom's Foundation for Corporate Ethics launches next week. I've noticed she never adds "Love Emma" anymore. The Corporate Ethics Foundation, Claire's masterpiece, built with the money she extracted from my hidden accounts. I open my laptop to find an email from Claire, her new corporate headshot gleaming in the signature. The photo captures her at my former desk, looking relaxed, powerful. Through the glass wall behind her, I can see her new executive assistant, some former Olympic swimmer turned MBA, half her age. The photos of him bringing her coffee, carrying her briefcase, have been all over Seattle's social media. She's enjoying that particular twist of the knife, I'm sure. The business world has already forgotten David Anderson. My name appears only in case studies about corporate fraud and cautionary tales about hubris. Meanwhile, Claire's legacy grows. She's transformed Wilson Global Partners into a beacon of corporate responsibility. The women I betrayed have all found success under her mentorship. Even Lauren is coaching tennis at country clubs again, her reputation restored by Claire's recommendation. Today's mail brought the final divorce settlement. No alimony, no property rights, no claims to any assets. Just a modest monthly stipend that barely covers this dingy apartment. Her note was characteristically precise. "I trust this concludes our business matters permanently." I signed the papers without reading them. What's left to negotiate? She won, completely. The woman I underestimated for 15 years now controls my fate, my fortune, and my future. Somewhere in the glittering distance, in the office where I once ruled, Claire sits at my old desk, her young companion bringing her coffee, just the way she likes it, while she builds an empire on the ashes of mine. My brilliant, underestimated wife has become everything I pretended to be, and more than I could ever be. And I'm left here, watching her through my grimy window, an ankle monitor ensuring I can't step foot in the world I once commanded.
And as usual, that was a lot. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. See you in the next one.